Welcome to Not a Great Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Katie Ray. I am joined, tell me if I say last name right, Charlotte Kibert.
You did perfectly.
Did I nail it?
You did, and that is so rare, so thank you.
Really? Is it? What do people say?
Kibert, Kilbert, Kerbert.
Oh, Kibert. I've probably heard it too from you or EB, and you go by CK sometimes?
I do, yes.
I love that you both do that. Little initials. I like it. I call my husband C-Ray because his last name's Ray and his first name's C. So when EB said EB, it just attacked. We met EB, your wonderful spouse, at one of the storytelling events. And since then, and my partner will be like, EB. Oh, okay. So Charlotte's coming on. Okay. So that's how you attack. EB is very catchy. CK is very catchy. Very good. But we are 10 months out from all y'all being open, correct?
We are. Actually, maybe even a little bit over since last time we talked to EB.
Wow.
It's been a year.
That's insane. Going strong. COVID can't stop you. Virtual and in-class safety precautions happening. I feel like you just painted when we talked to EB.
That's about right. So we opened on February 10th, had an amazing time. Actually, the mayor did a big ribbon cutting, and the first month was amazing. We had so many people coming out of the woodwork, wanting to do yoga, especially our version of yoga. Mm-hmm. And then we had to close down. So we actually closed down about a week before the city of Tampa mandated a shutdown. Right, and this is back in early March, of course, when we didn't really know how to control COVID. So we just made a decision we're going to shut down the doors a month after opening and go to virtual. And so we started offering virtual classes in place. We were so fortunate that the teachers that we had brought on board were very supportive of that. And that the students at that point had wanted to still do yoga because yoga is kind of a thing in the most stressful point in our lives. And so we made it through into the summer, and we uncomfortably but carefully opened back up with very strong precautions. We're blessed with a very large space, so we can really spread people out, and we very, very stringent with masks and washing hands,
limiting classes
and limiting class sizes, and continuing to do the virtual thing, which of course you're familiar with.
Yes, I'm very familiar with. I'm trying to get my family to join too, because they're always like, what are you doing? I'm like, virtual yoga. Because when I'm at work, I could come to class, but being home, I really wanted to be a part of all y'all yoga. And I'm in Pinellas County and you guys are in Hillsborough. So it is definitely a drive over if I'm not at work. So I was slowly getting back into the office. So I wasn't really here. And I was like, I'd really want to do some yoga. So it's definitely been a blessing just to have it just at my fingertips. But I know the feeling of being in the studio. So I definitely miss that a little bit. But right now with the kids and stuff, it's just perfect. To have that option virtual, I think is amazing that you guys transition that fast.
Well, and we were lucky to do that. And thankfully, some of us are pretty technical humans. So we were able to really quickly reconfigure to do virtual and do it successfully, right? Because it's not easy to do virtual yoga. And we did it. And, interestingly, it's kind of opened up an avenue that we hadn't even considered before COVID, which is, why don't we offer classes everywhere? Yeah. And we've had people all over the country who have continued to join us. And we're able to have this really amazing mix of in-person and virtual classes running simultaneously. And people seem to love it. So
I know,
we're going to keep it up. And Elizabeth actually managed to pick up some corporate clients who really wanted to bring wellness to their very stressed out, suddenly 100% virtual workforce. And, it's kind of the silver linings is that where we are today from a standpoint of where we expected all y'all yoga to be financially and all that's probably not where we are. But given everything that's gone on, we're doing really well, and we're excited for 2021.
I know. Are. And you are doing you're still teaching at all y'all while you carry your full-time job, correct?
I am, yes. So I do have a real job, quote unquote, adult job. And I do teach all y'all yoga, and I actually teach at Gaze Hot Yoga, which is our friendly neighborhood hot yoga studio. And we're all very close. It's a really tight yoga community. So I actually teach at both studios.
Oh, I didn't know you teach at that one too. That's really cool. And that one's a hot yoga.
You're
not hot yoga?
What's that?
Or is all y'all hot yoga as well?
No. So Baptiste Power is power yoga. And, from a heat standpoint, it's supposed to be about 90 degrees.
Oh, okay.
Versus hot yoga, which is based on what they call a 26 and 2, which is typically 105 plus degrees.
So for a lot of people, 90 degrees is hot.
If
Yeah,
you're
not
from
Floridians.
I don't know that I agree with that.
I
That's
mean,
room
90
temperature,
degrees is
but
not a cool weather, but yes, no, I
90
get what you're
degrees
saying. The hot
and 105 degrees, so it's a significant
It
difference.
is huge,
really
but
is.
if you say 90 degrees to some people, they're like, "What?"
Well, it's funny. Part of Journey to Power, and you've done some of it with the class
Yep.
that you've taken virtually, is the first 15 minutes was really designed to warm up the body and really get the body warm and ready for movement and ready for mobility and really warm up all the joints and really just kind of get your body ready to do the thing. In hot yoga, you just stand in a 105-degree room and you're there.
You're like, I'm already here. I don't need to warm
There's
up.
no need to warm up because it's pretty much instantaneous.
I've been sweating for 5 minutes. How do you like right now with the difference between hot yoga? We're going to jump into your journey and everything, but with the difference between hot yoga and the Baptiste yoga, which one do you prefer, one over the other?
So I really discovered yoga during my transition.
Okay. Yeah,
we're definitely be a thing that we'll talk about. So it was hugely important for me to navigate it. And so really I started with hot yoga. A number of my friends had really recommended me to it. And Gaze Hot Yoga, which is down in Tampa Heights, had just opened. So Elizabeth and I joined it right at New Year's of 2017. And we're like students, like first 20 students, and just fell in love with the practice. And it's kind of my happy place. And while I love Journey to Power, and I teach both, it's kind of like your first love. And I always go back to it because I truly love, again, it's a very different practice. It's funny when you get to do both. And I often get to do both. Like one day I'll do Journey to Power, next day I'll do hot yoga. And it is like peanut butter and jelly for my body and my soul and my mind. And so actually I find both of them complement each other in an amazing way.
And it's so important too during the transition that you were at Gaze Yoga specifically.
Was, yeah.
Oh, so it has a special place in your heart. So as a cis white woman here, I think the trans community is new to me. I know I was very involved with the gay community because of my father coming out when I was young and in middle school. And I feel like I lack the knowledge, and I feel like education is important. And I think for my listeners, as well as myself, I feel like I learn new things. I think it's very important for people to open their mind and see people for who they are and their character, and understand experience, because I think it just makes us more loving people. So I would love for you to kind of go through a little bit of your journey and what that looked like for you and just how you got to be here today.
Absolutely. So where to begin? So I always knew that I felt an identification towards being a woman since I was a tiny, tiny child. Like earliest memories were very confusing because I grew up in my parents are very liberal. My whole family's very liberal, and I've always been very blessed by that. So even throughout my entire journey, I've had a large level of support at a family level, and I think that's hugely important. But they didn't know, and I didn't know how to work with it. And we're talking about a kid in the 70s. 70s is not a friendly time for anything out of a very, very, very strict set of norms. And, so early on, I started feeling that things weren't right, that my body didn't match what my brain said it should, and learned how to hide that very early. My mom busted me wearing her clothes when I was like second grade, because I remember it vividly because she kind of confronted me. And I was like, oh, I've done something horrible. I've transgressed, and so hid it. But I've always known that, and especially meeting puberty and body changes, and just really always being out of step with what my body looked like and who I was identified as, and very much like a lot of people, especially in my age group, because I'm in my late 40s, swung to very masculine type of pursuits to almost try to excise these demons, if you will. So lived over in Ireland. So my family moved from Florida to Ireland when I was in 7th grade. So I lived in Dublin, Ireland in the 80s, which is amazing. Got such an amazing experience getting to live over in Europe and doing junior high school and most of high school in Dublin. But even more of a macho culture than the United States. If you can even believe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really is. So I played rugby and sports and karate, just name all the things. And then came back to the United States for my senior year of high school here in Tampa, Florida, where I've been ever since. And then continued just kind of all these different pursuits, but knowing deep, deep down inside that something was wrong. And so interestingly, my parents divorced from Ireland. My mom moved my sister and I back here to the United States. Ended up marrying my sister and I's swim coach from Ireland, a gentleman named Peter, amazing guy. He lives over here now. My parents, he's my stepdad. My mom was studying at that point to get her master's in psychology to be a practicing psychologist. So I had in high school the dubious opportunity to read a bunch of mental health manuals and read what at that point was transsexualism was, and right next to a bunch of other really horribly sounding mental conditions. Because at that point, we're talking late mid 80s at that point, it's still considered more of a syndrome or a disorder.
Oh, you were reading that under mental condition?
Oh yeah, because I was able to read that, and so I was like, okay, this kind of sucks. So maybe I should go ahead and just suppress this, knowing that this is true, but also knowing that I have the emotional fortitude to keep this down and try to live my life. And I met Elizabeth right after high school. We've been together for a really long time. In fact, next year will be 30 years. We've been together almost 30 years.
It's like you've been together since you were 5, because you look like you're 35.
We have been, that's exactly the thing.
That's exactly right.
But, we've been together for a long time. We've been together more than half our lives together, which is amazing because, both of us are not that old. So we got together very young. And I told her, though, and I think she talked about that a little bit during your podcast with her, is I did come out to her very early on that, hey, this is the thing, but I'm also not going to do anything about it, which I think allowed us to later navigate through this entire situation. So, fast forward 20-something years of, doing all these different, I was in motorcycles. I believe it or not, I had a big biker beard and all that kind of stuff. No, I did, for real.
Stop. No.
Really big into the shooting community, state champion with handguns more than once throughout the years. So did all these manly things and it didn't stick.
Yeah, you're like, this isn't helping.
So it was about early 2015, I kind of just came to a realization that I couldn't avoid this any longer. I was miserable and I knew why. And I think I just hit a point where I just had no choice but to be me.
Be yourself.
Finally, in my 40s, to finally be who I really was. And so told Elizabeth, and she was very supportive. And, again, utterly blessed that if your partner is behind you, most everything else will fall in line. And then started, I come from a fairly organized background with regards to my job. I've been in project management and operations management. All that. I'm in cybersecurity now, yep. So I'm an executive in a cybersecurity firm here in Tampa that's been very supportive. Was able to kind of project manage my transition, which is pretty complex. From a standpoint of, going from male to female, it's a significant change. I lost 80 pounds. My body changed completely in a profound way. I started taking hormones, which changed things even further, and really had to relearn who I was, not just from a societal standpoint of now being a woman, which was a big shock. We'll talk about at some point of what male privilege is and is not, because that's an interesting thing to learn. But really having to navigate these body changes and just going through a second puberty at 45 kind of sucks.
And while
puberty,
working.
Exactly. While working. And I was lucky at that point working from home. Go in the office every once in a while. I lost so much weight. And, female hormones change your body a lot. And one of the things it really does changes your skin, right? So, women's skin is a lot more tight, it's a lot more soft and all that. So I go in the office every once in a while, and there's a rumor at my office that I had cancer. Because I had changed that much, my physical being had changed that much. People thought I was sick and maybe had cancer or something. I'm like, no, I don't have cancer. I'm a girl. There's nothing wrong with me.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Yeah. So, it was a pretty profound set of changes.
Yeah.
And, I was fortunate at that point, the company I worked for, well, I don't know that ultimately when it's accepting had decided to go ahead and sell the owners had decided to sell it. And I was I benefited from that sale and was able to get enough money away to be able to transition, right? Because this is expensive. That's part that people don't realize when they start talking about, trans people in either way. For us to really transition in such a way that society accepts us is expensive, amazingly expensive. And that's one of the biggest challenges that trans people have is being able to afford to get the money to be able to do this in a way that will allow them to pass in society. Because society is incredibly unsympathetic and unaccepting of people who don't fit into a norm that people think they should. Like, as an example, me, I'm 6'2". I'm not small, as everyone can hear. My voice is not the most feminine in the world by any stretch, but but I'm also pretty attractive from a female standpoint. And I'm saying that just objectively.
No, you are.
You know, I'm blonde. I look good. But also, you know, I've had facial surgery to make my face look like a cisgender woman. And I have the time, energy, and money to be able to get my hair done and have good nails and, you know, learn how to do makeup and have enough money to buy clothes that fit me properly and accentuate my body as it should as a woman. So I can walk through society pretty well accepted. I'm just tall.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, maybe she played volleyball.
Just a
Everyone
model,
asks
a volleyball
me, hey,
model.
did you play volleyball? All the time. Like I'm sitting there playing, did you play volleyball?
You're like, sure.
Yeah, I played volleyball. Actually, no.
so good at volleyball.
Fun fact, I did.
Did you?
I did. So actually it's worked out.
You're not lying.
Yeah. So I'm not in fact
You're
lying.
like, I'm not a liar.
So that, you know, so that ability to physically transition in a way that makes me passable, even though I'm not, I don't hide it. If anyone asks, hey, are you trans? Yeah, I'm trans. I'm fine sharing it. But that just gives me that ability that when I interact with someone for the first time, they look me in the face, they immediately see woman. They immediately start assuming pronouns. They immediately start treating me like a female in our society. And therefore, I'm treated in a way that matches me. And if I didn't have those advantages, it would be a very different experience for me.
Yeah. And you recognize that though. So if you're saying insurance does not cover anything, so you, without being bought out, would not have been able to get the money, or, I mean, you would have been able to, but I'm saying like with insurance doesn't help.
Well, insurance is a tricky thing. So Obamacare, which is a good thing for most people, has a number of different mandates that do cover hormone therapy.
Oh.
It does cover a lot of the mental health, because a lot of mental health gates that you have to jump through to do it. And that's fine. There's a good reason for it. It's a little bit overly controlling, and a lot of trans people do feel that. But it's there for reasons that... So that
if you go through whatever you need to go through, you're making sure...
health counseling and get some letters signed off that this, you know, you really are trans.
Okay.
Which is problematic. You have to justify who you
understanding
are to someone else.
But it's like the precaution, but then you're like, why do you need to jump through these hoops to be who you are?
Yeah. So hormones are typically covered by insurance, and then the surgery, the gender reassignment surgeries that actually, you know,
not covered.
No, they are typically covered, which is good. But the problem is the surgeries that most matter to a trans person's quality of life are typically not, like facial surgery, like just you know, stuff like that. It's considered cosmetic, but realistically it's not, and that would be just as true for really trying to transition in any direction, right? I'm speaking very much from a male to female, classic transgender woman, and so I can't necessarily speak from what it was the other way, you know, from someone from male to male, or the huge amount of people nowadays that fit into the non-binary category, which is their own very different journey from what I can describe. But quality of life for someone to present as female, most of the things that really matter, which honestly is our face, because our faces matter, isn't covered. No, it's expensive. I ended up going to an amazing place in Spain called the Facial Team. Oh. So I had to recover on the med for my facial surgery. And they did an amazing job, incredibly good, somewhat more cost effective in the United States. And it was an amazing experience, but it was still something I had to do out of pocket. And I was just lucky enough that I could. And that's not the norm. Yeah.
But that's important too, because people who don't go through the journey don't realize how important that part of the journey is. And so they think, oh, we're helping, we have this covered. And you're like, no, actually, there's a lot of other things that aren't brought up, because probably on that board, there's nobody there that's trans, or there's nobody who's gone through the experience. So they don't realize. That's why it's so important to have so many diversity people on leadership roles. Okay, so gosh, one of the things you said that I totally got thrown off. I wanted to, gosh, what did you say earlier about with Evie kind of through the transition, or you telling her early on, when you guys would go and meet other couples who have gone through it, what is your experience with, I guess because I'm coming from a place where my dad didn't tell anybody until he was 40. So he didn't even tell my mom or anybody like that when he came out. Telling her early enough, do you think that helped her understand? It's like, is that what kind of helped the journey a little bit?
I think it was instrumental. And you know, it's being trans and being gay are different, right? Because trans people can be gay or straight. It's two very different things. We conflate them a lot because the LGBT community at large is always banded together. But interestingly, I would say in some fundamental ways, the coming out piece, whether you're trans or gay or whatever, is fairly similar. And people are surprised and they don't know. And so I would say that Elizabeth having forewarning, that's probably not the right word. Elizabeth knowing early on was very helpful for her to kind of know it's always been there. And I think in some respects, she always saw the potential with me as a human being had I transitioned, and she was patient with me. So when I did it to her, and of course I'm speculating someone else's brain, but I think to her there was an element of relief because finally she saw that her partner was carrying this weight that could never be put down, and finally that weight was put down. And I think she felt that was a really beautiful thing for her with her partner. Mm-hmm. And, Elizabeth is an amazing dynamic human being. And, speaking to the whole orientation piece, mm-hmm. Elizabeth likes pretty, so it worked out. So I was not bad looking before, and I'm doing okay now. So she was able to adapt to that part too.
Elizabeth likes pretty.
She doesn't. Who doesn't? I mean, oh my God. It's so funny. We were watching the Avengers last night and everyone's pretty. And we're like, I don't care. Male or female.
This is a great movie. Everyone is pretty. So pretty.
They're just so pretty. Oh my God.
And you're so right with that, by the way. The Avengers, everybody's pretty. Every single person. That's so funny. Okay, so I do remember my question from before. Do you think part of you not being able to, when you were younger and when you were found wearing your mom's clothes, so for me, did you feel shame right away when your mom found you in her clothes? Was there like a shame moment? Is that what made you kind of like, oh, I just got caught? Because as a mom, I think like that's super important for me because they put on my heels all the time, both of them, my boy and girl. And they put on Anna dresses and Elsa dresses together, like to play. But I never shame it. But I feel like different times in society, just in general, for me, it's like just open your mind, do what you feel is happy in that moment. But do you feel like you felt shame in that as a young person when your mom found you?
Oh, absolutely. Shame's an interesting word.
It was like you had to hide. I had
to hide it. But one of the things I think that's made it okay for my personal journey, is I don't feel shame about who I am. So I never internalized that shame. I think it was more, holy shit, I got caught, mm-hmm. right? And so maybe never get caught again. And you do need to hide this.
Okay.
But it's different from this internalized sense of shame mm-hmm. that a lot of people feel, I've seen it. I've seen it with people coming out as gay or people coming out as trans, is that there's an internalized sense of shame in who they are. And it's like, I was too weak to put it off, therefore I'm just going to accept my weakness, and that this is my weakness, and it's my authentic self, but it's also a weakness or something I'm doing wrong, or it's something I'm doing which is against some religious dictum or mm-hmm. some societal norm that I'm transgressing now. And so therefore I'm doing something wrong and I should be ashamed about it. I just can't not do it anymore. So I don't think I never internalized that shame in that sense. And that's really critically important.
That is.
But I didn't want to get caught anymore because I didn't want that external shame of being judged.
Caught
or just mm-hmm. get in trouble. But thankfully it didn't stick. I guess that's probably a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. I just find that I'm having more conversations with my kids that were never brought up when I was a kid. And I enjoy it that they're asking questions and you can be completely honest and open about it. But I think it just takes a lot of people understanding that just because you're not used to something doesn't mean it's wrong, or the hate is just so overbearing sometimes in groups of people. So I think it's super important. And I'm thankful that you like to educate as well, because sometimes it's not on you to educate people to not be an asshole, right? But it is nice to just hear your experience and you letting people know this. I think a perfect example is just healthcare. I'm like, wow, it's covered. Your whole transition's covered. That's so great. And you're like, no. What's really important what's really important here is things you wouldn't think. Other people wouldn't think of, and I'm living it. And I would like to talk about your ink at some point as well. Were these always there? Are they new?
That's the combination. So some of this is, I was a punk rock kid in the 80s, and that means really bad tattoos done by your friends in high school, and which need to be covered up, and then covered up again with the bad tribal tattoos of the 90s. So like the one that you're seeing on my left arm is actually 3 layers deep of bad tattoos. Finally done with a good one.
It's really pretty though.
I know, so shout out to
the third
Skip Sampson,
tattoo
amazing
artist.
tattoo artist here in Ybor City. He does a great cover-ups, which we all need to know.
Everybody needs to know how to do that.
Yeah. So some of these tattoos, some of them are, most of them actually, I'd say, especially my arms, are predate my transition.
Really?
Some don't. And I've got some other ones since then. Tattooing is kind of this weird, kind of cyclic. I don't want to sit there and get stabbed for 4 hours straight, and then I need new ink.
Yeah,
and it's
Heard.
You have to work
I don't
your way
have
up to it.
tattoos. I'm not great with needles. I want to know how your mom was after you finally. Wait, I feel like she might have. No, she was. What was she learning? Psychology, you said?
When I was a teenager, yeah, she was studying to get her master's and then be able to practice. So she's a mental health counselor here in Tampa now. She's primarily specializes in drug and alcohol, but does mental health for a whole gamut of stuff like that. So in 2015, I told Elizabeth, started planning things. And then, kind of late 2015 was the coming out. We talked about that earlier. It's not like there's this one event that means you've come out. It's this concurrent waves of telling, first I told my immediate friends who were super accepting, and then more people, and then finally, oh crap, I gotta tell my family my hair is growing out. They're gonna notice. They're gonna know something's going on. So I invited my mom and my stepfather over and had this long speech prepared, like solid 20 minutes.
I feel like you're a very organized person, so that you
especially
definitely
public
rehearsed,
speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, for you to really make a good impact, you need to practice this. It's not like you can just do it off the cuff. So I start my speech, and my mom and Peter are sitting there, and I'm about 5 minutes in. My mom just looks like she's starting to get impatient. And then I say, and so I'm transgender. And my mom looks over at my stepdad and says, "See, I told you so." And I'm like, okay. And then that was it. So the other 18 minutes of my speech, it's gone. I got nothing.
You're a lot like her is what you're saying today.
It was. So, I think my mom has been incredibly supportive. My mom and dad and stepfather, not so much my stepmom. My father's up as a professor at the University of Florida.
Oh,
He was, he's colonel in the military and all that. Very liberal guy though. So pretty open-minded, but he struggled with it. I think he still does a little bit. My stepmom up in Gainesville is actually super friendly. My stepfather, Peter, old school Irish guy, but very, very, very accepting and loves me. My mom, they struggled with it for a while, and I think it's part age. And I was their eldest son.
Oh, so you have siblings?
Yeah, so I have younger sisters.
Okay.
So I was the eldest son. I was the eldest child. I was the eldest son, and
Okay.
that has importance to my mom. And I think it took a while for her to wrap her head around. Now I'm her eldest daughter, and she hasn't lost anything. But it took a while because eldest son means something. We're Irish Catholic. Yeah. That has loaded meaning, and it was gone for her. And so it took her a while. I think now I'm her eldest daughter, and all the things I think represented before as eldest son has more or less transferred over. And we have a really good relationship, but it took her a while. And I think, if anyone's listening who is talking about transitioning, is be loving and patient. It's especially the older you are, the longer the mental map they've formed of you are, and the more they've developed this view of this human being that you are. And when you change it dramatically, it does take a while for them to catch up.
I think just listening to you, the compassion you show to others when they're not even in the process you're in is very inspiring, because you took it from their view. You're like, I was the oldest son. Like you let them grieve what they needed to grieve to then move on to accept you for who you are. So that's really hard in any position to just understand where the other person's coming from, because now you're in a beautiful place. But it took time, and that's hard.
Well, and you mentioned grief. I mean, my mother said at one point she's going through a grieving period. And for me, who's all excited, finally I'm who I am, and I get to share this, and this, me. And part of me, there is this brief moment of transition that everyone goes through where you become very, very inwardly focused. And it can also turn to selfish if you're not careful with it. But even if you're mindful of it and being compassionate, you still are inwardly focused. And I still to this day don't quite understand what she meant by grieving, but also realize I didn't need to understand. I'm expecting her to accept something about me without understanding. That's a two-way street. is I don't have to understand everything to accept it. So maybe give her that time and space. And yeah, it sucked, but it was for the best, and I think the difference between especially someone knowing you for a long time when you transition, who keeps messing up your pronouns and isn't doing it intentionally. They don't mean it with, negative intent. They don't, I have been fortunate that's only happened a couple times where I've been very specifically, insultingly given male pronouns. Just because someone was basically being a dick to really show them that they didn't, that this is bullshit. I don't believe in your whole trans, blah, 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 blah. And it's become political, right? In 2020, this is actually a political thing as well. But the majority of people don't do it because they're intentionally dissing you. They're doing it because their brain is just vapor locking. And it's very important to differentiate between the two. And one is kindness and gentle reminders like, no, it's her and she, kind of like the chocolate bar mom.
Yep, gentle.
Versus, being very strident about it. And everyone's going to approach this differently, but I think compassion, empathy, we demand a lot of it when we transition, but we also need to give it. Yeah. Because I think that's true of anything in human society is, and that's what we're lacking these days is compassion, empathy for others. So you better step up if you want that. You better give it.
Yeah, I love that. And that is important because just like I approached you with educational side and just understanding, it's like we shouldn't take everything as hate, right? So sometimes it just takes that one moment to just be compassionate and be like, I love how you said Hershey, like the chocolate bar mom, because it is important for us to just take that, because you could just open someone's eyes to what they didn't realize. And I feel like right now in 2020, there's a lot of just hatred and turmoil and things going around where just that little bit of compassion might go a long way, not to the wrong people, not to the shitty people, not to the assholes.
Well, but I'd argue that to some extent even them. Because,
I know.
I mean, and that's the biggest dichotomy right now is how do you feel compassion, empathy towards someone who probably ultimately is very threatened by everything going around, and understand that actually that feeling of threat is what's driving that behavior. And how do you get around that feeling of threat to actually make them feel like, no, actually everything's okay. Me being trans doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. Anyway. Why don't react to it? It just let it go.
You're right. And now that you're in a corporate atmosphere, you're a female executive. I have to say, technology, because you're cybersecurity. So I've been in technology, and just being a woman in the technology industry is hard. How do you feel?
So I think one thing I'm lucky is that I happen to work at one of the only cybersecurity companies in the country and possibly the world that is owned by women.
Oh, awesome.
The company I work for, my CEO is a woman named Charlotte Baker, ironically. Oh. That's one of the reasons I'm CK, because it gets really confusing.
Oh, got it.
And she's been running this company called Digital Hands for about 15 years. And so coming into one of the few companies that actually has a female CEO and a number of other female managers, I think it's a little bit different.
Oh, it is.
So I ain't gonna lie, I lucked out there. And I'm really good at what I do. And the reason I'm here is actually, it's a sequence of events that from before I transitioned, I knew people who knew how competent I was and how good I was. And so, they were accepting of me when I transitioned and got me, into an executive role at the company before this. After I transitioned, my first job was, executive at another technology services company, and then came over here to this current company. And so I had one job before this to build credibility, and then moved to this one. But at the same time, male privilege is a thing, and I don't have it in the same way. Although there's probably some vestiges. Because I think one of the things that's different between men and women is men expect to be respected and women have to earn it, right? So one thing that a lot of women who don't believe trans women are really women would point to is that, well, you had male privilege before, therefore you're not really a woman. Okay. But I would argue that I have an expectation of respect that every woman should have. And I embody it because I did experience the workforce as a male, but I expect that even so. And I think every other woman should expect that equal respect. And so I demand it. And I think that's part of why I've been okay is I think I have this immediate expectation of respect that every human being should have regardless of gender. Mm-hmm. That I think's allowed me to navigate it. But yeah, I get cut off now. People interrupt me now. I will say a good idea, and 5 minutes later, someone will say it like it's their idea. And I'm seeing it now, and I'm seeing all the things that my female coworkers told me about before I transitioned, because I was fortunate that I had good friendships with women before. I always gravitated women, weird, that, they'd experienced, and I would see it externally and try to be respectful and not be the one to cut them off or not be the one to take credit for their ideas, but saw it. Now I've seen it happen a couple times, and it's real. People just I'm really I'm very technically competent. I was an engineer back when. I've had people mansplain shit to me, and I'm like, what? Wait, no, time out, honey. You have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I know so much more about this than you. I've got a body of knowledge experience that is vastly bigger than you, and you're now telling me how to do a simple thing because, the cute blonde girl doesn't know what she's talking about.
Pretty.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. So it's real. And for me in the corporate world, I think mostly I'm lucky also that our CEO is female, and she didn't put up with that shit. She does not put up with that. She is in charge unequivocally, and she demands that respect from everyone around her, and she gets that. And so every woman in that organization, I think, has a higher level of respect because she sets the tone of the organization.
And you level each other up.
Exactly. And there is. And I think you see all the women in the organization bond together really well for that. There's not... There is a feeling of, camaraderie among all the women in the organization. But I see it in casual society even more than the corporate world.
Yep.
Or I'm very customer facing. I'm the vice president of customer success. So my job is to talk to customers constantly. And so, yeah, I see it every interaction with a customer or a partner, and just that. Oh, that's great, honey. Can I talk to the man now?
Yeah. And you're like, no, it's me. Thank you.
If you want to talk to me, you can
I'm
talk to my
smarter.
boss, and she's going to kick your ass. So, I mean, so I think I'm a little bit lucky in that sense that I work for a woman, and she's
you're
very supportive of women in the workforce.
And that's powerful. Just all the women in the workforce, executives, the CEO. Yeah, I just love it. Okay. So what is some of your advice for people wanting to come out or transition? You did it later on in life.
I did.
And that's hard in general, right? So you knew who you are and you wanted to, but you kind of, society norms, you just kind of tried to, what is it? It gets the end of the day. I forget words. Words are not great. But you conform to society norms sometimes. But what is your really advice for our listeners?
So I have two sets of advice. One are for parents, because you brought up earlier that your kids wear your heels. And so know that you're not going to turn your kid trans because they wore your heels.
And that's okay if they are, though.
or your daughter wore your husband's clothes or whatever. Just know that if someone's trans, they are really trans. It is legitimate. It is something that has been clearly identified by the medical community as being a form of human experience. And know that if your kids, your son's wearing your wife's clothes, it doesn't in any way, shape, or form mean anything except for to want to see what it looks like. So I think number one is just be aware that your children's development will be based on their development, and the influence. You're not going to influence one way or the other, except for you can make it more miserable if it's true. Yeah. So be aware of that. I would say anyone transitioning, that it's scary. It is not for the faint of heart, but I wouldn't do it any other way. And there's part of me that always regrets waiting till I was in my 40s. But, I think given the time and my age and all that, transitioning in the 90s earlier, it would have been horrible. I think society has come along a long way. We have so far to go. Trans has been politicized, the bathroom bills and all the crap that the conservatives are using to really rile up their base. But it doesn't work anymore. I mean, that's interesting that 10 years ago, most people didn't know a gay person. 10, 15 years ago, and the surveys you read year after year have changed, is that the support for gay people changed dramatically as people all said, I know someone who's gay. So if you know someone who's trans or gay or something like that, you're more likely to empathize, right? It's all about empathy. And so more people know trans people now than they did 5 years ago. And it's nowhere it needs to be, but it's changing. Know that there are people out there that love you, and know that, as scary as it seems, I can only speak from my experience, is that all of the fear, all of the worry, everything that built up, it didn't come true. I'm still me, and I get to live a pretty amazing life, and it's Thrive Transition. So it's scary. It's stepping off a cliff. It's a leap of faith. It literally is leaping off a cliff, and you don't know where you're going to land. But it's better than the alternative, which is standing on that cliff miserable for the rest of your life. And so I would say find help, find support. There's so much out there, especially the upside of social media. There's an upside to social media is that you can meet like-minded people around the world who can help guide you through it. That you can do this. And it is something that you deserve because you deserve to be you. So.
You're super pretty. And freedom's contagious, I feel like. So it's like, it's from one of my favorite books, Untamed. Glennon Doyle, like an 8-year-old woman stood up and was like, why is everybody gay now? You know, like what's going on? She's like, it's GMOs. And she's like, made everybody laugh. And she goes, no, it's the freedom of being who you are. It's not anything you're eating or someone's teaching you. It's literally just being able to see people be who they are and you being able to be who you are. I hope there's a point where parents aren't like, oh, I think I made my kid trans. That's not how it works. Like there's nothing negative about it. It's just allowing your kids to be who they are. Like that's all I see every day. My whole goal as a mom is to make sure they feel comfortable in their own skin and they can be who they want to be. That's it.
I think the thing that always makes me sad is that if you think back through recorded history or just history period, how many people have spent their entire life suppressing being gay or trans or whatever and spent their whole life miserable, went to their graves never being them forever for millions. I mean, because, especially in Western European society, being gay, being trans, whatever, was utterly unacceptable. So there's been countless people, because there are no more trans people now than 20 years ago. We're just out more. There's no more gay people than there were 20 years ago or 100 years or 300 years. The same amount of people have been gay or trans or all of the above, but now we can finally come out and express it. And the thought of all the people that came before me, whose shoulders I am literally standing on today to talk to you, who had to sacrifice to allow me to be here, that means a lot to me. And the sadness of all the people who went probably their entire lives hiding this, it's tragic. And so if we can prevent that tragedy going forward, oh my God, that's, I can't think of something that, me personally to be part of. If I can help one person, that's huge.
Which just sharing your story could help one person. Super powerful. Thank you. Thank you for everything you're sharing with us. I know being vulnerable is hard for people, but I feel like it just opens your mind. You're an amazing human. You're helping people. You work really hard. EB rocks. So you guys are just building this community around you. And I think it's powerful. And your character speaks about it. And your beautiful blonde locks and blue eyes. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So one little thing. So if you're transitioning, I should add this earlier, do yoga. Yoga will help you explore your body. And that's so profoundly important when you're going through this. So yoga really helped me. I know a number of other people, trans, gay, whatever, that yoga has given them the ability to learn their body and their breath and all the things that yoga brings to you. It's important to everyone. Everyone should do yoga, but I will tell you, especially if you're transitioning.
Because it re-centers you, right?
It's like literally relearning who you are. And I'm not talking about like any profound way. I'm talking like just in a
literally
body
your
breath.
body. Yeah.
So go do yoga. That will help you transition.
At all y'all, though.
At all y'all, yoga. Do it. Or even gays or anywhere. Do yoga. Yoga will change your life. And especially as a trans person, it will really help you navigate that journey. So. And
you started yoga right when you were in transition, or?
I had gone quote unquote full time, where I told everyone, and I was done. I didn't have to hide anymore. And then probably about 3 weeks after that, I started doing yoga. And right after I started doing yoga, then I started doing the really physical aspects of transition, and literally had to relearn my body. And yoga really gave me the tools to learn who I was, when I was now who I really was, but was different from the person I was literally at a physical level for 40 something years. So do yoga, y'all.
And when you're in the right mind too, I feel like yoga is so different for me this time around too, because I've always had like spurts of yoga, but this one was really focused on just my well-being. And I feel like my mindset has changed how much I need it now. So it's like really your mindset, right? So you were like you were like ready to be fully you and just everything. And it just kind of like fit. So follow All Y'all Yoga and Gaze Yoga. Is it Gaze?
Yeah, it's All Y'all Yoga Tampa, and then Gaze Hot Yoga Tampa. So 2 amazing, incredibly diverse studios that accept anyone at all.
Yep.
Proud of both of them. Love them both.
Amazing. Charlotte, thank you we finally made it happen.
I
You know, we had a couple of schedule. We missed. I missed. We all missed.
10
It's
months
fine.
in a pandemic. You know, no big deal.
First podcast?
First podcast.
First
Yes,
podcast.
my first podcast
Welcome to your
ever.
first podcast. Thank you so much for joining. We're at BKN Creative in Ybor City. You will find Charlotte on Not a Great Whisperer podcast, www.katyray.com, at The Real K Ray. I thank you for coming. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
I'll do the little heart from yoga.
Boom.
I had so much fun today. Thank you for joining. And I can't wait for our next episode. We're going to jump into it, talk about all of y'all just hitting all the conferences and everywhere, virtually, in studio. I'm going to get to the studio. I appreciate you so much for coming. Thank you.